4-year-old orphan's hair burned by rich girl, but a millionaire appears, and what she does moves everyone. Comment: giving my story a rating from 0 to 10, your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The rain poured down on the asphalt of the chaotic metropolis, forming little rivers that ran through the clogged gutters of Main Street. Under the awning of the most expensive private school in the upscale neighborhood of Bel Air, a small, huddled figure tried to shield himself from the icy drops that insisted on finding gaps in his flimsy shelter. The 4-year-old orphan, looking more like a 2-year-old due to the severe malnutrition that etched every protruding bone of his thin face, clutched a piece of moldy bread to his chest, scavenged from the dumpster behind the French bistro on the corner. His unkempt hair, matted with dirt and neglect, clung to his scalp like strands of dry straw. The tattered clothes, far too large for his frail body, hung like rags from his shoulders, bowed by the weight of a life that had already demanded far more than a child should bear. The rubber flip-flops, with holes exposing his bare feet to the cold and damp, completed the desolate picture of total abandonment. On the other side of the ornate wrought-iron gates, the private school children played in the covered courtyard, their cheerful voices echoing through the air as they awaited their private drivers, who would soon arrive in luxury cars to pick them up. Among them stood out the 4-year-old rich girl, daughter of the region's most powerful real estate mogul, with her perfectly coiffed blonde ringlets and an immaculate school uniform that cost more than many families spent on clothes in an entire year. The rich girl was the first to notice the orphan boy on the other side of the gate. Her blue eyes sparkled with a malicious curiosity that didn't match her age, and she nodded to her friends, discreetly pointing out the miserable figure huddled from the rain. The group of privileged children slowly approached, like predators circling defenseless prey. "Look what we found," the rich girl said, her sweet voice contrasting with the venom in her words. "A little street rat hiding at our school." The other boys and girls laughed, finding the situation amusing. It started small, with whispers and scornful glances, but soon the cruel game grew. Small pebbles began to be thrown through the bars of the gate, hitting the orphan boy who tried to dodge them without leaving his makeshift shelter. "Get out of here, you disgusting thing!" shouted one of the boys in the group. "This isn't your home." The orphan boy shrank even further, hugging his knees and hiding his face between his skinny arms. Each cruel word was like a punch to his empty stomach. Each mocking laugh echoed in his mind as a reminder of all the humiliations he had suffered in the 4 long years of his short life. He had learned from a very young age that staying quiet and waiting was the best strategy for surviving difficult times. The rich girl, realizing that the boy wasn't reacting to the taunts, felt a strange frustration growing in her chest. She was used to getting everything she wanted when she wanted it, and the orphan boy's lack of reaction deeply bothered her. It was then that her eyes fell on the expensive leather purse that her nanny had left on the bench near the gate. Without the nanny noticing, preoccupied as she was talking on the phone about her weekend plans, the rich girl discreetly opened the purse's gold clasp and rummaged inside. Among lipstick, wallet, and other items of an adult woman, her little fingers found something that made her eyes gleam with a disturbing malice: a sleek, heavy silver lighter. The cold object in her small hands sparked a terrible idea in her childish mind, a cruel need to make the orphan boy react in some way. She looked at her friends, who watched her expectantly, waiting for the next phase of the macabre game. "I'm going to teach this disgusting thing not to hang around our school," the rich girl murmured, her words laden with a malice that shouldn't exist in a child of her age. The orphan boy, still huddled and trying to become invisible, didn't notice the movement on the other side of the gate. He didn't see when the rich girl approached the bars, didn't sense the danger approaching like a black cloud over his already suffering head. The sound of the lighter being flicked open cut through the damp air of the rainy afternoon like a foreshadowing of tragedy. The small flame danced at the tip of the silver object, reflecting in the determined eyes of the rich girl who stretched her arm through the bars of the gate, aiming at the boy's unkempt hair. What happened next would forever change the lives of everyone involved that dark afternoon. The lighter flame touched the dry strands of the orphan boy's hair with terrifying speed. The fire spread as if the hair were made of dry straw, creating a small bonfire that illuminated the child's terrified face. The cry of pain that echoed through the rainy afternoon was so sharp and desperate that even the birds in the nearby trees took flight in panic. The orphan boy thrashed frantically, trying to extinguish the flames with his small hands, but only succeeded in spreading the fire to other strands. The pain was unbearable, as if 1,000 burning needles pierced his scalp at the same time. His screams echoed through the street, mixing with the sound of the rain that was starting to fall harder, but not enough to put out the fire that consumed part of his head. The rich girl dropped the lighter, which fell with a dry thud on the wet ground, and took a step back, her eyes wide with horror as she realized the magnitude of what she had done. Her friends screamed in fright and ran away from the gate, some starting to cry as they saw the flames licking the orphan boy's skin. Across the street, inside a luxury car stuck in the heavy rush-hour traffic, the 30-year-old millionaire watched the scene through the rain-streaked window. She was a stunning woman, with features reminiscent of movie stars from the golden age of Hollywood. But her brown eyes carried a deep sadness that not all her wealth could disguise. She wore a tailored suit that cost more than many people earned in a month, and her discreet but expensive jewelry gleamed softly under the grey afternoon light. When she saw the flames in the orphan boy's hair, something inside her broke. The scene brought back painful memories of her own son, whom she had lost in a terrible accident 3 years earlier. The emptiness in her heart, which she tried to fill with obsessive work and increasingly risky business deals, suddenly turned into a desperate urgency to act. Without thinking twice, the millionaire opened the car door and ran out into the rain, her high-heeled shoes slipping on the wet asphalt. She didn't care about the expensive suit being soaked or the curious glances of passers-by. All her attention was focused on the orphan boy, writhing in pain, as the flames finally began to extinguish with the heavier rain. "Oh my God! Oh my God!" she murmured as she ran, her hands trembling with despair and adrenaline. Reaching the orphan boy, she took off her priceless cashmere coat and used it to smother the last embers still burning in his hair. The boy had fainted from the pain. His thin face was pale as paper, and his breathing was weak and irregular. A large area of his scalp was burned, the skin red and blisters starting to form. The millionaire picked up the boy's frail body in her arms, surprised at how light he was. She could feel every rib through his tattered clothes and the heat of the fever that was already starting to set in. Her tears mixed with the rain as she carried the child back to her car, shouting instructions to the driver. "Nearest private hospital, quick! It's an emergency!" Her voice was filled with an urgency she hadn't shown in years. During the desperate journey through the chaotic traffic of the metropolis, the millionaire held the orphan boy against her chest, feeling her heart race with each weak breath the child took. She called her contacts at the most expensive hospital in the city, using all her influence to ensure that the best medical team was waiting when they arrived. "I want the best burn specialists, the best equipment, everything, no matter the cost," she shouted on the phone, her voice cracking with emotion. At the hospital, doctors quickly took the orphan boy to the emergency room. The millionaire stood in the hallway, her clothes still wet and stained with soot, pacing back and forth like a caged lioness. Nurses and other patients looked at her curiously, wondering what the relationship was between that obviously rich woman and the miserable boy she had brought in. Hours passed before the chief doctor came out of the operating room, his serious face revealing the seriousness of the situation. The burns were second degree, covering a significant area of the scalp. A long and expensive treatment would be necessary, with the possibility of several reconstructive surgeries over the following months. The next 48 hours will be critical, the doctor explained. He's stable for now, but we need to monitor for signs of infection. The burns are serious, and he's severely malnourished, which complicates the healing process. The millionaire nodded, her hands trembling as she signed all the necessary papers to authorize the treatment. She didn't hesitate for a second when she saw the exorbitant amounts that appeared on the documents. Money was the only thing she had in abundance, and if she could buy that boy's recovery, she would spend every last penny. That first night, she didn't leave the hospital. She sat in the uncomfortable chair next to the orphan boy's bed, watching his irregular breathing and the medical equipment that monitored his vital signs. With each beep of the devices, she felt a pang in her heart, remembering the similar nights she had spent beside her own son before losing him. When the orphan boy finally woke up the next morning, his frightened eyes met hers. He tried to speak, but his throat was dry and sore from the screams of the previous afternoon. The millionaire leaned over the bed, her soft voice contrasting with the firmness of her words. "You're safe now, little one. No one will hurt you anymore." But even as she spoke those words, she didn't know that the nightmare was just beginning. Outside the hospital, reporters were already beginning to gather, drawn by the story of the rich woman who had saved an orphan boy. And in a mansion on the other side of the city, the powerful real estate mogul, father of the rich girl, received a call that would make his blood run cold. 3 weeks had passed since the terrible incident, and the orphan boy was still hospitalized in the luxury hospital. His burns were healing slowly, leaving scars that would probably never completely disappear. During this period, the millionaire had become a constant presence in the room, bringing expensive toys that the boy barely knew how to use, and fine clothes that were too big for his still frail body. The boy watched her with a mixture of gratitude and suspicion. All the adults in his life had caused pain or abandoned him, so why would this elegant woman be different? He answered her questions with monosyllables and cringed whenever she tried to touch his bandaged head. The millionaire, in turn, maintained a calculated emotional distance, fighting the urge to hug him and comfort him as she would her own son. It was during one of these morning visits that the hospital administrator appeared at the door, his professional smile barely disguising the greed in his small eyes. He carried a leather folder full of papers, and his expensive tie couldn't hide the prominent belly that betrayed his excesses. "Madam, we need to discuss the costs of treatment," he said, his voice honeyed. "The boy has been occupying our presidential suite for 3 weeks, using specialized equipment and intensive care. The amounts are significant." The millionaire looked at the numbers on the bill and felt a knot in her stomach. The amounts were 3 times higher than she had initially estimated. It was clear that the hospital was taking advantage of her generosity and despair, inflating unnecessary costs. But looking at the orphan boy, who was pretending to sleep while listening to the conversation, she knew she couldn't leave him without the best possible treatment. "All right," she said, signing the checks without hesitation. "Continue with all the necessary procedures." The administrator left with a satisfied smile, but the millionaire didn't realize that this would be just the first of many extortions she would face. That same afternoon, while organizing her company's papers at home, she received a call that made her blood run cold. "Hello, dear former partner." The male voice on the other end of the line was familiar and laced with false cordiality. It was the powerful real estate mogul, father of the rich girl, her former business partner with whom she had broken off relations years before due to his unethical practices. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice icy. "I heard you're playing adoptive mother with that orphan boy. What an interesting coincidence, considering it was my daughter who caused the accident." The deliberate pause made the millionaire clench her free fist. Your daughter didn't cause an accident. She deliberately burned a defenseless child. Oh, but who's going to believe the word of an orphan boy against that of a respected family, especially when they find out some interesting details about your recent personal life, those risky investments in bitcoins, the debts you're hiding from shareholders, the problems with the IRS? The millionaire felt the ground slip out from under her feet. How did he know about her financial problems? She had been so careful to keep this information secret, especially the cryptocurrency investments that had gone terribly wrong in the past year. "What do you want?" she repeated, her voice trembling this time. "Simple. Stop playing the hero with that kid. Get him out of the hospital, disappear from his life, and I'll keep your secret safe. Keep insisting on this charade of kindness, and I guarantee that by tomorrow every newspaper in the city will know about your desperate financial situation." The phone went silent, leaving only the sound of the millionaire's heavy breathing. She knew he wasn't bluffing. The real estate mogul had contacts throughout the media and enough resources to completely destroy her reputation. But abandoning the orphan boy now would be like abandoning herself. The next morning, another devastating blow awaited her. The social worker in charge of the case appeared at the hospital accompanied by a court officer, their serious faces indicating serious problems ahead. "Ma'am, I need to inform you that you are being investigated for kidnapping a minor," said the social worker, a middle-aged woman with thick glasses and a perpetually suspicious expression. "This boy was in state custody when you took him off the streets without authorization. I saved him. He was being burned alive," protested the millionaire, her voice rising an octave. "That didn't give you the right to make medical decisions for him. There are protocols to be followed. The boy should have been taken to a public hospital and the case immediately reported to social services." The millionaire watched as the social worker flipped through documents, each page representing a new legal complication. The orphan boy, still in the hospital bed, watched everything with his big, frightened eyes, not fully understanding what was happening, but realizing that something terrible was approaching. "There are also questions about your motivations," continued the social worker. "Your business competitors claim that this is just a marketing ploy to improve your public image after some recent scandals. Using a vulnerable child for personal gain is a serious crime." "That's ridiculous," exploded the millionaire. "I haven't gained anything from this besides debt and headaches." "Then why do you continue? Why would a woman in your position care so much about an orphan boy from the streets?" The social worker's question echoed in the room like a gunshot. The millionaire opened her mouth to answer, but the words wouldn't come out. How to explain the emptiness she had felt since her son's death? How to describe the inexplicable connection she had felt the moment she saw the orphan boy being burned? How to admit that saving that child was her only chance for redemption? As she struggled to find the right words, another problem materialized at the door of the room. The chief doctor entered with more papers, his grave face indicating bad news. "The burns are healing, but a complication has developed. There are signs of deep infection that may require much more complex and expensive reconstructive surgeries than initially planned. We're talking about years of treatment, possibly decades." The millionaire looked at the orphan boy, then at the social worker, then at the doctor, and finally at the window where she could see reporters gathering outside. Her life was falling apart. Her secrets were about to be exposed, and she was being investigated for trying to do the right thing. But the worst was yet to come. That afternoon, when she finally had a moment alone with the orphan boy, he whispered something that made her heart stop. "You're going to abandon me too, aren't you?" The orphan boy's question echoed in the millionaire's mind for days. "You're going to abandon me too, aren't you?" Those simple words carried all the weight of a lifetime of abandonment and betrayal. She had promised to protect him, but now faced a perfect storm of legal problems, blackmail, and financial pressure that threatened to destroy not only her life, but also the boy's chances of recovery. During the 4th week of hospitalization, New horrors came to light. The millionaire discovered that hospital employees had been bribed by the real estate mogul to administer medications that purposely slowed down the healing of the burns. The orphan boy was being sabotaged in his own recovery, turned into a pawn in a cruel game between powerful adults. "How could you do this to a child?" she shouted to the hospital administrator, brandishing the medical reports she had obtained through a loyal contact. "You are deliberately prolonging his suffering." The fat administrator just shrugged, his oily smile more irritating than ever. "Those are very serious accusations, ma'am. Are you sure you want to pursue this? After all, your legal situation is already quite complicated." It was at this moment that the millionaire realized she was completely alone. Her own employees had begun to question her, her investors were nervous, and the press painted her as a rich woman trying to buy a clean conscience. Even her safest financial investments were being affected by the instability of her business. The rich girl's nanny had become another unexpected problem. The woman, an immigrant desperate for money, had secretly filmed the burning incident with her cell phone and now blackmailed both the real estate mogul's family and the millionaire. The images were clear. They showed the rich girl deliberately burning the orphan boy while the others laughed. $500,000, demanded the nanny during an anonymous call, or the video leaks on social media by tomorrow. Imagine what will happen to your reputations when the whole world sees a rich child setting an orphan boy on fire for fun. The millionaire knew that even if she paid, the blackmail would never end. But she also knew that if the video leaked, the orphan boy would be exposed to public scrutiny, turned into a symbol of a tragedy he never asked to star in. His privacy and dignity would be destroyed forever. Meanwhile, the orphan boy's psychological state deteriorated rapidly. He had developed a terrible phobia of fire and started having horrible nightmares every night. He woke up screaming, reliving the moment of the flames, and refused to eat, thinking he didn't deserve the expensive food they offered him. The child psychologist that the millionaire had hired warned that without emotional stability, physical recovery would also be impaired. "He needs security, a family, a home," the specialist explained. "All these legal uncertainties are destroying any progress we can make." The fifth week brought the last straw. The millionaire discovered that her business competitors had taken advantage of her absence and personal problems to steal her 3 largest contracts. Her company, which had taken a decade to build, was on the verge of bankruptcy. Her investments in stock market plummeted. Her gold reserves were confiscated as collateral for debts, and even her bitcoins were hacked by criminals who knew of her vulnerability. It was when she was at the absolute limit of her strength, sitting in the hospital hallway at 3 in the morning, crying silently so as not to wake the orphan boy, that a nurse approached with an old yellowed envelope. "Ma'am, we found this among the boy's belongings when he arrived. It was sewn into the lining of his tattered blouse. We thought you should see it." With trembling hands, the millionaire opened the envelope. Inside was a faded photo and a handwritten letter. The photo showed 2 girls smiling arm in arm. One of them was unmistakably the millionaire at 12 years old. The other was her childhood best friend, the girl who had mysteriously disappeared when they were 15. The letter, written in hasty handwriting and stained with old tears, revealed a devastating truth. "My dear friend, if you are reading this, it means that something terrible has happened to me and my son is left alone. He is the son of the real estate mogul you know, but he can never find out about this. When I was young and worked as a cleaner in his company, he forced himself on me and then threatened me so that I would never tell anyone. I fled when I found out I was pregnant, but he has the resources to find me wherever I go. If something happens to me, please protect my boy. He is innocent of all the sins of his father. The only family he has is you, the only person I have always trusted." The revelation struck the millionaire like a lightning bolt. The orphan boy was the son of the woman who had been her best friend, a victim of the same man who was now trying to blackmail her. The real estate mogul wasn't just trying to cover up his daughter's crimes. He was trying to eliminate the living evidence of his own, even more horrifying crime. Everything made sense now. The orphan boy's distrust of adults, his deep fear, the way the real estate mogul knew intimate details of her financial life. He had spent years investigating every aspect of her life, waiting for the right moment to strike. With newfound determination burning in her chest, the millionaire rose from the floor of the hallway. She had found her real motivation to fight. She wasn't just saving any child, she was honoring the memory of her best friend and protecting her son from the monster who had destroyed so many lives. The next morning, she confronted the real estate mogul in his own office, her friend's letter in her hand like a weapon. "Now I understand why you want me to abandon the boy so badly," she said, her voice as firm as steel. "He is the living proof of what you did to my friend." The real estate mogul's face paled, but he quickly regained his composure. "You can't prove anything. Those are the words of a dead woman against a respected man." "Maybe," agreed the millionaire, "but I can guarantee that he will grow up knowing who his true father is. And when he turns 18, he will have all the resources he needs to seek justice." The blackmail had been reversed. The real estate mogul retreated, realizing that he had underestimated the strength of the woman in front of him. In the following months, all of the millionaire's legal problems were mysteriously resolved. The corrupt hospital employees were fired, and the blackmailing nanny disappeared to another country with a generous sum to keep her silent. A year later, the orphan boy had become the millionaire's adopted son. His scars had healed as much as possible, and although he would carry physical marks forever, his soul was finally beginning to heal. He had learned to trust again, to smile again, to believe that he deserved love and care. The millionaire had lost much of her fortune in the battle to save him, but discovered that she had gained something much more valuable: a family. The emptiness in her heart, which had ached since the death of her first son, was finally filled with the love for this special child that fate had placed in her path. In the quiet afternoons in their new home, smaller than the previous mansion but full of warmth and laughter, she watched the boy play in the garden and knew that every sacrifice had been worth it. She had kept the promise made to her best friend so many years ago, and in the process had saved not only a child, but also herself. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment on what you thought of my story, giving it a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.